Okay. This is another hand actually facing the same villain from the previous hand, the Maniac, except this time it's at a higher stake and also with a different stack size. So as you can see, villain opens first to act 3x. We 3-bet to 36, which is 3x from the button in position. And villain calls. Now, the reason we included this hand was to show you a hand at a different stack depth against a similar opponent where we're 3-betting from the button. Now, in the previous hand, we said that we 3-bet full pot because we were deeper. Here we're making it 3x. And I'm assuming that you're going to agree with me that the main reason you're making it 3x here is so that you have a more manageable SPR to work with post-flop. Can you explain a little bit more about that and why that allows you to exploit opponents more?
Sure. So even though it's only a difference of a couple of dollars pre-flop, it can add up to big differences post-flop given the SPR that we are creating and the c-betting sizes that we can choose in relation to the pot size. And by choosing a slightly smaller amount, we make sure that we have enough stack behind to play a street post-flop game. So be able to, if we have to, like on the favorite board structures, that we are able to fire 3 streets. So with a smaller sizing, I know for a fact like that he's opening pretty light, but he's not 4-betting light at all, because some players may like when they're maniac like pre-flop, they also just get it in with a lot of stuff that they open with, but this was not the case. And the player behind me were tight regulars, so it was very unlikely that they were kind of picking up my sizing here and going for light 4-bets or cold calling here with a lot of hands. So there was like basically the perfect condition to just ensure again to isolate the fish with a reasonable hand. This time we see, we are not, unfortunately, not suited to the ace. That kind of hurts our hand, but it's still well connected. It has a suit in it. It has high card strength, so it's definitely worth playing against the fish. So all those reasons combined, in this case, make it better to just make us to choose a slightly smaller 3-bet sizing.
Yeah, that's all very good. And again, the most important factor, I think, of course, is being in position against a weaker opponent. Now, I'm assuming you would also 3-bet this from the cutoff. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's a given. And in general, I think it's actually more of a 3-bet from the cutoff, just because you don't want to call and put yourself in an awkward position post-flop, kind of going along with what I talked about in the previous hand, where I said you don't want to be caught in that awkward sandwich post-flop where you don't know what the players behind you are going to do when faced with a c-bet from the opponent. Now, what would you do if you were out of position? Would you still 3-bet this from the small and the big, or would you lean more towards appeal?
Yeah, like what you said just about the cutoff, I agree completely. It becomes even more of a question of a fold or a 3-bet there, because especially when having good aggressive opponents behind you, because they also going to exploit the fish and your weakness by just flatting instead of 3-betting. So they are going to 3-bet themselves, like squeezing a wider range than usual. And even if they just call, we have a very uncomfortable situation post-flop with a hand that is not really suited for multi-way pots. So yeah, whenever we have position on the fish, we want to 3-bet that hand. And now to your other question, when out of position, it changes a lot the situation, because even though he's a loose fish, he can still get you into trouble post-flop when you're out of position and flopping kind of marginal on boards where you don't really want to commit yourself by barreling. So I would rather lean towards a flat or even a fold. Like from the big blind, when we're closing the action and everybody else folded, I think we can definitely always call. Playing a smaller pot this time out of position, just hoping to flop something strong and then decide how we continue, like proceed post-flop. And from the small blind, we look at the big blind. If he's one of those aggressive opponents, we are rather just folding. And when he's tight or passive, then we can also get away by flatting from the small blind.
Right. that's all very good. I agree with the peel out of the big. I might three bet this from the small against like a button open against some players, but I think I agree with basically everything that you said, especially with the part about peeling out of the big. In general, you want to keep the pot bigger. There's no reason to inflate the pot. Also, peeling, of course, gives you a lot of good check raising opportunities. So, yep, very nice.
Cool.
Onward to the flop. Comes 10-7 deuce two-tone. We have a wrap and a backdoor flush draw. He checks. We see bet 54. Now, before I go any further, I think I want to talk a little bit about the thought process here. As you can see, the fact that we 3-bet a little bit smaller than pot definitely left us with a more manageable SPR. As you can see, it's just below 4. And I think that actually the c-betting decision here is interesting, so I want to spend a couple of moments talking about it. Now, I personally think that against some players I would check this back, just because like against the check jamming range you're really not doing very well, and this does hammer a 3-bet calling range decently well. So the fact that we have a wrap and a backdoor flush draw looks like it presents a pretty good check back opportunity. I think that I would be more likely to check it back against a regular who's going to be check raising with like a more accurate range or like a more profitable range. Against this set opponent, I think that I lean more towards a c-bet just because you mentioned that he plays more passively, so he's a lot of hands that he should check jam, he's actually going to check call and then give up later on or make a bad stack off or something like that. Is that pretty accurate, or maybe enlighten me with what you were thinking about as the hand was going on?
Yeah, that's actually pretty accurate, but I'm not sure if I already mentioned that because in the first time we introduced him as a maniac, but actually was just maniac likely like pre-flop, opening way too light and like just having a very high PFR in VPIP. But when it came to post-flop play, he was actually pretty straightforward and passive. So only raising a very small percentage of the time with his absolute monsters, and with everything mediocre or even like good mediocre, he's just calling. So I was pretty sure that when he has something like a wrap himself, he's just going to check call. If he has some kind of flush draw, he's just check calling. An overpair, he's check calling. So he's kind of more on the loose passive side that is calling much more often than raising. So I was pretty confident that when he raises at that point here, I can just let it go because his raising range is consisting out of sets and flush draws with pairs or like monster draws. So that allows me much easier to c-bet that one.
Right, that's very good. And again, I think it's important to consider the SPR. In a single raised pot, let's say that somehow we had like isolated a limper, or he was in the big and he had just called our raise. I would always c-bet this, just because again, like there's so many good barreling opportunities, especially since we have the ace of clubs. Anytime the turn's a club, we're going to be able to barrel very profitably. We do have the backdoor flush draw. Would you agree? Like in a single raise pot, you pretty much always be c-betting here.
Yeah, definitely. And also against more aggressive players, then we have enough room to just call the check raise and we are going to win on all the clubs. But if we get check raised here, we have no way to play our ace blocker anyhow, because it basically becomes a shove or fold situation and no way to get him off weaker flushes on any time of the hand.
Right. Very good. Let's see the turn. He does decide to check call us. Turn is a 10, pairing the top card, and he checks. Now the decision here is whether to barrel or check back and realize our equity. What do you think the best play is here? And we'll see what you chose in a second, but I kind of want to hear your thought process on these kind of turns and what you would have done on a variety of different turn cards.
Sure. So it's not the best turn for us because I would say that his check calling range on the flop is any flush draw, any top pair with side cards, any overpair, and any reasonable straight draw. And we have to kind of discount a little bit his straight draws since we have already 3 cards blocked. So I think since he's on the loose side, that we don't get him off queens or kings by continue betting here. And he's definitely like I would say, quote unquote, aggressive enough to check raise here if he has trips. So when we bet here, we open ourselves up to get check raised and to have to fold our hand. That would suck since the SPR is pretty low and we would get decent odds, but we're not sure how many of our outs can be tainted. Maybe he already had like a 10 deuce that he slow played and we're drawing that. So overall, I prefer to check it back here and just take the free card. And yeah, just basically for the fact that we don't have enough folding equity here to make a profitable second barrel.
Good. I think you said that very well. So we do check back the turn, and the river's a jack. He checks, and I mean I can't see any reason to check this back. I think that you have the best hand here always. Now it's just a matter of sizing. I really think there's only two options for sizing. I think that you should go like pretty small or actually quite big. What do you think the best option is?
Yeah, like you said, it's very opponent dependent and what reads we have on him, or if we don't have enough reads, then look at his stats. My first indicator is always the when to showdown or fold to river bet. That shows me if he's in those situations, because obviously once we bet here, we're polarized. We are wrapping a straight or pocket jacks basically. So his question becomes, since his range is very likely either a misdraw that he just gives up with, or he has a bluff catcher by having trips or an overpair. And since we want to make sure to get most value out of his bluff catchers, we have to kind of figure out whether he's rather curious and bluff catchy when we are betting in a spot where we are super polarized, or if he gives us credit. And if he gives us credit, we want to bet small to induce him to call. So maybe we just bet around half pot size or a little bit more, but not bombing it here, to just get those calls from pocket queens, pocket kings, a weak 10 or whatever. But whenever we think that, which applies to a lot of like weaker players, that they are always looking for reasons to bluff catch and they just see their hand, especially when they have a 10. I think weaker players are never able to fold trips here. So against those, I want to make it pretty big, since they're basically inelastic in their calling ranges, and we want to exploit them and maximize our value by betting big. So that was also what I chose against this opponent, because I had a read on him that he's pretty stationary in spots where I'm wrapping a polarized range.
Yeah, I like it. I think all that stuff's good. Yeah, I think that, if you bet smaller, they might even fold over pairs anyway. So I think that it's good to bet bigger for the times that he does have a 10. And you never know, like you can still get looked up by over pairs as well. So I do think bigger is better. In this case, for the reason you mentioned, that's very, very good. As you can see in this hand, we did choose a bigger size, 152 into white 86, but unfortunately, we got a fold. But I thought you played this hand very well, and I really like your thought process.
Cool.
Do you have anything else to add before we move on to the next hand?
I think we covered it pretty decent, so we can just hop on to the next hand.
Perfect.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Casino Crime here. Now, if you like this video and you want more, then go ahead and click the subscribe button below right now. And if you want to join me for more of my 6 max success secrets and free video tutorials, just click the link to the right. See you inside the trainings. Good luck.